my friends, followers, fans, supporters, he asked me about putting less pressure on yourself to be successful. He watches all these videos on YouTube about being successful and he stresses himself over nothing because he is as determined as he can be to succeed. I relate to a lot of shit this guy posts on a lot of different levels. And I myself am very highly attracted as well to redheaded women. Everybody give him a follow on Instagram if you can. I know his question isn't about what this video is about. Mainly. But I want to make this video to briefly answer his question before I really touch upon something else, which is graphically explaining some thoughts on videos he may or may not be watching. As far as the question, my philosophy is that you should never stress yourself over nothing. Stress is just the achiever's word for fear. If you want to call yourself an achiever, you should always be pressuring the fuck out of yourself. There's no nothing about it. There's the higher purpose for which you're alive, that's one thing. I'm an extremist on this, perhaps clearly. A lot of the very, very successful people may actually not even feel the same way. But most of these people most likely did at some points when they were younger. I know Bill Gates said that he was an extremely harsh boss when he was younger, in the beginning days of Microsoft. He said it's important to not project that harshness onto your management style, which I definitely agree with. I think it's important not to let all this pressure on yourself project onto other people, all this impatience. But being pressured to succeed, in my experience, isn't as empowering as pressuring yourself to succeed. Being pressured to succeed by external environments is something that definitely has its merits. Having a harsh boss or coworkers can really thicken your skin over time. But I've heard so many interviews where people who are praised in their fields, and they've said that they have had a thicker skin as a result of being constantly gassed up by their coworkers and bosses. There are pros and cons to all of these things, but I feel like you should never not be putting some extent of pressure on yourself to succeed. Shit, if you're determined enough, the amount of pressure is probably never enough. You're always like looking for more ways to jack yourself up. Get ready to fucking the world. There are no limits here. There are some cautions though, like mentally, emotional, like almost spiritually perhaps speaking. There's exception and appreciation. Like if you do not get the results you want, I think there's absolutely no reason to stress about that either, because that is nothing. If you're determined enough, I feel like from a good perspective, a healthy, determined perspective, that is like a lack of results is nothing, but at the same time, you should always be looking for more ways to jack yourself up and get more of what you are trying to get. A lot of people, you know, achievers, so-called, they can't exactly, from what I've heard, can't exactly look at both sides of that coin. They really focus on what they expect and not what they appreciate, let alone can find themselves appreciating. Anyone, if you want to look more into this, look into Tony Robbins. But basically, a lot of people don't really appreciate the results. They're just focused on what they expect. When you are like this, you are actually physically training yourself not to be happy, because you are attaching what you perceive as happiness to the idea of things that are not already within you. I know that sounds fucking crazy, but I'll try to link a video or two in the description that goes a little bit deeper into it and makes a little bit more sense. But now I want to talk about the real problem with motivational videos. Motivational videos and speakers are,
not necessary.
and to me, this is only because motivation is kind of... You want to talk about practicality and productivity? It's just enthusiasm. And enthusiasm does sell. It can be very contagious, perhaps, but I don't think it should exclusively be a fucking occupation. Like, it sells, but that's all it does. If you want to talk about enthusiasm alone, because enthusiasm alone, all it really does is pump people up, and they leave the room, they leave the seminar, less than 2 weeks, let alone a day later, everything goes back to fucking, normal. And you know why? It's because ideally, enthusiasm should be mixed with some sort of education. Education. Yes, education. You should be learning about yourself in fun, practical ways that are exciting to you. Because, dude, at no point in that case when you are applying them, for sure, will you ever probably be like, oh, I need some motivation right now. Because you're gonna be fucking ready all the time. Because it's fun to you. There's a difference between motivation and discipline. A fucking huge one. A lot of success that I have at least studied, actually, is more of a result of discipline than motivation. Motivation has kinda nothing to do with success if you are looking at it from external necessity-based standpoint. Success serves as motivation itself, probably, to those who don't have it. To a degree, okay, maybe. But even the more educated speakers like Mel Robbins, for instance, say that motivation itself is garbage. Believing that you need to feel ready in order to do something is a bullshit garbage lie. Anyone who believes this has not sufficiently practiced the science of self-discipline to the point where they don't need any sort of external motivation, because it's always pretty much there in the back of their minds. If not, at least something that will inevitably create it through their habits that they have shaped over time. Motivational speaking is a discipline. It is. But that's just an example of the fact that these people are pretty much always motivated. At least for the most part. But don't worry about them. When you're disciplined, and you can look at them as examples, the work fucking does itself. You want to talk about smart work? People automatically feel motivated at all times to do things that are easy. When you do something very repeatedly, the more automatic it becomes, easier and less stressful it gets over time, because there's a learning curve. You learn about that process, that task yourself to a degree when you're doing that shit. But what's wrong with just fucking making things easy? What's wrong with practicing self-discipline instead of trying to find that drive and ability to just get up and not procrastinate from external sources? A great book on disciplining yourself that I found is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Great book. If you want to practice self-discipline, you want to see compounding results in every, let alone any area of your life, this book easily changed my life in more ways than any audiobook I listened to in the last probably year. I started working out again right after listening to it, and I mean, the results are nothing like what I've seen from myself before. I'm now easily in better shape than ever, and by easily, I literally mean it was easy. If you want to know how, I would recommend checking out the reviews of the book, or you could wait until I make a video about it, because that probably will inevitably happen at some point. But I feel like both will probably require some degree of self-discipline, so it's a good place to start if you want to practice it, I guess. I don't know. But discipline kind of just comes from within. I heard from, I think, Ralph Smart, that the truth can't be told, it has to be realized. But I feel like that's why so many of us get caught up in pretending that a feeling of, okay, let's do it now at all costs, just comes from outside sources. That has to be a lie. Like, I swear, like, honestly. Let me tell you something. If you need motivation or inspiration from external places, more often than not, at least, from an extremist viewpoint, you probably should not even try to be doing what you are doing. And by extremist, like, that's just one perspective. Take the pill if you want. I'm talking about the only person, or I guess robot, I know of, who works over 100 hours a week. One who I look up to probably more than anyone in the world, Elon Musk. In this video, he explained that if you're wired to do it, you should do it. But if you need inspiration or some motivational advice, you shouldn't. Anyone who disagrees with him, I definitely understand where they're coming from. Like, it makes sense. Most people are not able to handle that much work. I mean, again, though, it's if you're wired, so-called, to do it. And you could technically wire yourself to do it over time, whether or not he feels the same way. Like, I am at least under the impression that nobody is meant exactly, like entirely, to do anything in particular. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about entrepreneurial DNA, but if being an entrepreneur is in his DNA, that must mean that buying the jets is in his DNA too. And I can't imagine a universe in which that actually makes sense. But I think, no shade toward Gary V, I mean, he's a really fucking smart and driven guy. But I think that you can wire yourself to do these things if you give enough of a shit from deep down. And if you don't, that alone can change. In my favorite book ever, Napoleon Hill says that desire is the starting point of all achievement. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at here. But a great book on this in general, I will link you guys to it in the description. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Your wiring, per se, doesn't exactly have to be entirely natural. Particularly, most things people compliment me on that don't involve my appearance are absolutely unnatural. They are not second nature. Maybe their inevitability was? Kinda? I don't really know. But what I have to say here, whether it's true or not, I mean, it's kind of like a demand or command. It's not really like a factual piece of information. It's that you just shouldn't worry about feeling motivated. Worry about being disciplined, being driven, being one of education. That shit should be within everything you do and consume. If not, you should strive for that to be the case. Whatever motivation people are talking about should be something you feel within as a result of your relationship with the environment, not the environment itself. Feeling motivated to do something should never come from some lousy ass video. Maybe that's just my experience, but I have never ever watched one of those videos and paused it and thought, oh my gosh, he's right, time to get back to work. Motivational speakers just fucking talk. Do they do other shit? I mean, of course. These people are successful. If you know about them, you know about them. You can learn anything from someone who is successful in what they do. I believe that more firmly than a lot of people, perhaps. Like, these people are in self-development. They have to rely on other channels of it. If they work out and spend time with family and try to balance that all out, motivational speaking is, in theory, at least from what I've heard about it, not always easy. Like, you have to deal with haters. You have to deal with fucking, like, good vocal delivery and making sure that your branding and everything is on point. Even if you have a team to do it, you still have to practice self-management and be good at that as well. But what are they saying to you? What do you learn from it? If you look this person up and it says motivational speaker, but nothing else on their Wikipedia or other pages about them, if I were you, I would be paying a lot of attention to what the fuck they're saying and or doing that you can really concretely learn something from. Like, look for anything. Look to learn. Look to be disciplined. Look to be driven, because relying on a feeling that comes and goes is nothing more than waiting for life to happen until you die. So that's what I think is wrong with motivational videos. Maybe they have their merits, I don't even fucking know. Like, I could be wrong. A lot of this is really just perspective. But what do you guys think? What motivates you? Is it like deep within? Is it something that happened to you in the past? Is motivation enough? Do you need motivation? What else do you need? What do you need that isn't motivation? I don't have the solid answers to these questions. I mean, I could talk about them forever, but they don't solve problems unless you dig deep enough into them, I guess. But that's why I don't always try to make videos like this one. I want to just kind of get the different layers of the mind conditioned to think a little more divergently. If you guys have any ideas for future videos, please let me know in the comments below and I will give you a shout out if and when I use them. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up. There are links at the bottom of the description to all my social media. Also at the bottom of the description, there are links to my new production kits where you can find all the hardware and software that I use to make music and these videos. If you buy any, I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making the videos for you guys. I made all the beats in this video. If you want to use them, you can find links to each one in the description from first to last or at samuel.earth. Make sure to leave a like if you like it, subscribe if you haven't already. If you could turn on that little bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find me everywhere and I will see you then.